The Soviet War in Afghanistan, 1979 to 1989.
Subscribe for daily content. Support this channel so it can grow.
Only a small percentage of people that watch my videos are actually subscribed. If you feel like supporting me more, join my Patreon.
60. A Red Army soldier and an Afghan army officer pose for the press on October 20, 1986, in downtown Kabul. Hashtag Daniel Janin, AFP, Getty Images. 59. Afghanistan's President Mohammad Najibullah, Center, smiles as he meets Red Army soldiers on October 19, 1986, in downtown Kabul during a parade. Najibullah, who became president in 1986, was later hanged in a street near the UN compound in Kabul on September 27, 1996, where he had sought sanctuary since April 1992 when Mujahideen guerrillas entered Afghan capital. Hashtag Daniel Janin, AFP, Getty Images. 58. Red Army soldiers stand for review on October 19, 1986, in downtown Kabul during a parade, shortly before they returned to the Soviet Union. 57. Police and armed Afghan militiamen walk amid the debris after a bomb, allegedly placed by the Mujahideen rebels, exploded in downtown Kabul during celebrations marking the 10th anniversary of the Afghan Revolution backed by the Soviet Union on April 27, 1988. 56. As the planned withdrawal of Soviet troops began, Afghan troops were trained and supplied to take their place. Here, a soldier crawls with his comrades, during a training session in Kabul on February 8, 1989. According to officials, the soldiers were from a new unit formed to defend vital installations in the Afghan capital. 55. A Soviet soldier smokes a cigarette at a checkpoint of the Soviet military airport in Kabul on February 10, 1989 as the other one forbids pictures. 54. Wheels down. A Soviet transport aircraft seems to brush the treetops as it comes in to land at Kabul airport on February 8, 1989. Soviet pilots flying in out of Kabul took defensive measures, including the firing of flares to divert heat-seeking missiles. 53. An emotional mother embraces her son, a Soviet soldier who has just crossed the Soviet-Afghan border in Termez, during the withdrawal of Soviet Army from Afghanistan, on May 21, 1988. 52. A Soviet Air Force technician empties a bucket of spent flare cartridges at the Kabul airbase on January 23, 1989. 51. A Soviet-style military parade, held on the occasion of 5th anniversary of Afghanistan's 1978 Sour Revolution, in the streets of Kabul on April 27, 1983. Hashtag AP photo. 50. Two Soviet soldiers taken prisoner by the Afghan resistance forces loyal to the fundamentalist faction of Hezb-i-Islami in the Afghan province of Zabul in September of 1981. The prisoners had told journalists then they would be executed by the Afghan resistance for refusing to convert to Islam to make eligible to be tried by an Islamic court. Hashtag AFP, Getty Images. 49. A Soviet soldier runs for cover, as his armored car comes under fire from Muslim rebels, near the town of Herat, on February 13, 1980. Hashtag AP photo, Jacques Langevin. 48. In this late April 1988 photo, Soviet soldiers observed the highlands, while fighting Islamic guerrillas at an undisclosed location in Afghanistan. Hashtag AP photo, estate of Alexander Sekretaryev. 47. A troop of Muslim rebels equipped with old-fashioned rifles, east of Kabul, on February 21, 1980. At the time, anti-communist rebels were attacking traffic at will on the main supply route from Pakistan to Afghanistan's capital. Hashtag AP photo. 46. Three Muslim rebels, one armed with a Soviet-made AK-47 assault rifle, left, the others with older bolt-action rifles, pose on horseback during a rebel meeting at village near Herat, on February 15, 1980. Despite the presence of Soviet and Afghan government troops in the area, the rebels patrolled the mountain ranges along the Afghan-Iran border. Hashtag AP photo, Jacques Langevin. 45. In this late April 1988 photo, Soviet soldiers prepare to change their position while fighting Islamic guerrillas at undisclosed location in Afghanistan. Hashtag AP photo, estate of Alexander Sekretaryev. 44. Muslim anti-aircraft gunners in eastern Afghanistan's Paktia province on July 20, 1986. Hashtag AP photo, Barry Renfrew. 43. Afghan guerrillas, armed and equipped with motorcycles, prepare for action with Soviet and government forces in the mountainous western region of Afghanistan on January 14, 1980. The guerrillas were able to slip in and out of neighboring Iran, where they resupplied from Muslims who sympathized with their struggle. Hashtag AP photo. 42. Afghan refugees flee fighting, entering Pakistan near Peshawar, in May of 1980. Hashtag AP photo. 41. Afghans wait outside the Kabul Central Policharkai prison on January 14, 1980, days after the Moscow-installed regime of Babrak Karmal took over. Although the regime released 126 prisoners from the notorious jail, around 1,000 residents stormed the compound to set 12 inmates free. Hashtag Hans Paul, AFP, Getty Images. 40. Soviet soldiers direct tank traffic outside Kabul on January 7, 1980. Tank units had set up positions all around the capital city. Hashtag AP photo. 39. Russian-built Afghan MiG-17 jet fighters lined up at an airport in Kandahar, southwestern Afghanistan, on February 5, 1980. 38. A low-flying Afghan helicopter gunship in snow-capped valley along Salang Highway provides cover for a Soviet convoy sending food and fuel to Kabul, Afghanistan, on January 30, 1989. The convoy was attacked by Mujahideen guerrillas with rockets further up the highway, with Afghan government troops returning fire with artillery. Hashtag AP photo. Lu Hongxing. 37. A Russian T-62 commando tank destroyed in the Panjshir River. 36. Rebels on the lookout for incoming Soviet soldiers. 35. Two Soviet army soldiers emerged from an Afghan shop in downtown Kabul on April 24, 1988. Hashtag AP photo. Lu Hongxing. 34. A Muslim guerrilla shows off his combat ration of peanut butter from the U.S., July 11, 1986. Interestingly armed with a Chinese Type 56 and not a Soviet production AK. China was one of the countries giving support to anti-Soviet guerrillas. 33. An Afghan guerrilla handles a U.S.-made Stinger anti-aircraft missile in this photo made between November 1987 and January 1988. The shoulder-fired, heat-seeking missile supplied to the Afghan resistance by the CIA during the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan is capable of bringing down low-flying planes and helicopters. At one point, late in the war, rebels were reportedly downing nearly one Soviet aircraft every day with Stinger missiles. Hashtag AP photo. David Stewart Smith. 32. Afghan guerrilla leader, Ahmad Shah Massoud, Center, is surrounded by Mujahideen commanders at a meeting of the rebels in the Panjshir Valley in northeast Afghanistan in 1984. Massoud was central to much of the anti-Soviet resistance, and after the troops left, struggled with others to create a new government. In a few years, Massoud and his forces were fighting the Taliban, and he had become an enemy of Osama bin Laden. On September 9, 2001, Massoud was assassinated by two attackers backed by al-Qaeda, just days before the September 11 attacks on the U.S. 31. U.S. President Ronald Reagan meets with a group of Afghan freedom fighters to discuss Soviet atrocities in Afghanistan, especially the September 1982 massacre of 105 Afghan villagers in Logar province. Hashtag Ronald Reagan Presidential Library. 30. Afghan rebels pose on top of a crashed Soviet helicopter. 29. Military parade in Kabul marking the 5th anniversary of the SOR Revolution. 28. Two Soviet soldiers captured by Afghan rebels. 27. Soviet soldier escapes heavy fire directed at his armored vehicle. 26. A mujahideen, a captain in the Afghan army before deserting, poses with a group of rebels near Herat, Afghanistan, on February 28, 1980. At the time, it was reported that the Afghan capital of Kabul returned to normal for the first time since bloody anti-Soviet rioting erupted there, killing more than 300 civilians and an unknown number of Soviet and Afghan soldiers. 25. A group of Afghan rebels. 24. Afghan refugees fleeing the violence. 23. Soviet soldiers situated on mountain top operate an AGS-17 automatic grenade launcher. 22. Soviet soldier shows off an American Stinger missile, captured from Afghan rebels. After the Soviet withdrawal, on a ruined fortress in the outskirts of the western Afghanistan city of Herat, a young man, formerly fighting for the Muslim guerrillas, but now on the payroll of the Afghan government, mounts a weapon as cattle peacefully make their way to water in the background, on August 30, 1989. #AP photo, Barbara Walton. 20. Soldiers love to drink. Russians love to drink. No wonder that Russian soldiers can be amongst the hardest core boozers around. If anything, this was even more the case in Soviet times when the very difficulties of getting hold of booze acted as a spur to the ingenuity for which Russians are also rightly known. The same guys who could fix a tank engine with sticky tape or make the world's toughest rifle were formidable and innovative in their quest for a drink. 19. Flour. 18. Soviet soldiers wash themselves in a stream. 17. Soviet soldiers pose with spoils of war. 16. Afghan rebel carries a U.S.-supplied Stinger anti-air missile up a snowy hill. 15. Young mujahideen mounts an anti-aircraft cannon. 14. On the march in the valley. 13. Soviet helicopter flies past one of the Buddhas of Bamiyan. They were destroyed by the Taliban in March 2001. 12. Soviet tank overlooks partially destroyed Afghan village. 11. Soviet armored forces. 10. The Soviet army took a group photo in front of the armed helicopter Mi-24. 9. A scene from the war in Afghanistan. 8. Soviet soldier in front of the tank. 7. Afghan guerrillas resisting the Soviet army. 6. Afghan government forces supported by the Soviet Union. 5. Soviet soldiers holding their ground. 4. Mujahideen fighters watching for Russian convoys in February 1980 in Herat, Afghanistan. American support for the fighters helped drive the Soviets out in 1989. 3. Soldiers in January 1980 in Gardez, Afghanistan, a month after the Soviet Union invaded. A newly published cable suggests a reason for the invasion was a fear that Afghanistan might switch loyalties to the West. 2. Soviet-Afghan War. The 24th of December 1979 to the 15th of February 1989. 1. Soviet soldiers with bomb-sniffing dogs search for IEDs. Russian sappers and their bomb-sniffing pooches.
Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave a comment, like and subscribe. Support the channel so I can bring you more content. Thank you again.